Good morning, everyone. I wanted to pop on and show you guys some amazing black bean brownies. I had previously made these on a live many months ago at the beginning of COVID. Hard to believe that is nearly 6 months ago. Time has surely flown by this past year. So crazy, 2020. But these brownies are amazing. Lots of you have seen I was experimenting tons with cooking and baking in the early months of the pandemic. And these black bean brownies are amazing. So here is an image of what they turn out to be, and I'm getting it from a cookbook, which I absolutely love. I follow them on Instagram, so if you follow my Instagram, Cooking with Brianna, I tag them a lot. This cousin duo, they've created a cookbook. It's called Free-ish Food, Full Hearts. So it is an amazing cookbook. Some of you might recognize Jillian Harris. She was on The Bachelor Canada, or sorry, she was on The Bachelor in the US. And then she's on Love It or List It Vancouver out west. And her cousin is a dietitian. And they've come together and they have created an absolutely amazing cookbook with lots of healthy alternatives, using different types of foods to make things healthy but tastes really good. And it's a lot of comfort food, which we are going into winter months here, and that's what we love eating when it gets cold out here, especially in Canada where it gets super cold for half the year. So super excited that I got this. They do post their recipes. If you go onto my Instagram and you go onto their Instagram themselves, they do post some of the recipes through their website. But again, because they have a cookbook, they only keep certain recipes on for like a week or two, just to encourage, obviously, probably the sale of their cookbook. So I have purchased it off Amazon, super cheap, and I love the different recipes in here. So as I said, today we are making the black bean brownies. I have experimented in the past with chickpea brownies, that kind of stuff. To be honest, I wasn't totally a fan of them. The texture was just totally different, but these black bean ones are really great, and I use my blender. If you can see it here in the background, I use it to blend up some of the ingredients, including the black beans. That way they're all incorporated. There's no chunks, so you're not going to be eating the brownie and having black bean chunks all throughout. So it's going to be completely combined, which is awesome. Personally, my dad is not a fan of lentils, but he really likes these brownies because you don't even know that there's black beans in them. And I've had some of my little cousins also eat them, and they enjoy them as well. So it's great, and it combines coconut on the top. It gets toasted in the oven, so it turns out really wonderful. And then, of course, some chocolate chips. Today I'm going to be using a mixture of just some milk chocolate chips. You can use vegan or that kind of stuff as well. I'm also going to just be using up some of the dark chocolate little chunk chippets that I have as well, that I just want to use up in this recipe. So they'll go in and on top of this brownie. So we'll get started here. So the great thing about this cookbook as well is that they give you options if you are gluten-free, if you're nut-free, dairy-free, if you're a vegetarian, or if you are vegan. So if you have these restrictions in your diet, which not always are a bad thing, this cookbook will help you and tell you in different ways under each recipe how you can make that dish, say gluten-free or vegan, which is pretty cool. Personally, my family has no restrictions, so I usually just use whatever recipe they use in their families, and I try to replicate it. So, for example, in this recipe, we are going to be using coconut oil, we're going to be using almond milk, which I have. But of course, if you don't like that kind of stuff, you can substitute it with any other type of milk or any other type of oil or butter, that kind of stuff. So we'll get started here. So it says preheat your oven to 350. So my oven behind me has been preheated. You're supposed to line a 8-inch pan with some parchment paper. I'm using a discontinued rectangular stone. As you can see, oh my gosh, it's so seasoned, so it's amazing. Unfortunately, we don't sell this one anymore, but I just wanted to show you the longevity of our stoneware. This being over probably 20 years old, still gets used, as you can tell, probably every day, and it's still going strong, and it just keeps getting better, so it's great. So again, I've cut a piece of personal paper, and I'm gonna line it, and then the brownies will go in there after. Okay, so in a blender, we're gonna combine the black beans and cocoa powder. So I'm just gonna move my recipe book over here because I don't wanna get it dirty. So the first thing with your black beans, any type of lentil, you wanna make sure that you're rinsing them. So these came out of a can, an organic type brand. I rinsed it in a colander, make sure all the impurities are getting washed away from it. Then it can get added to the blender. Okay, so that's added. Next step is to add the cocoa powder. So I have to add a half a cup of cocoa powder. So I'm just using this brand. You can use any type of brand, whatever you have on hand. And it calls for a half cup. So I'm gonna take my measuring cups here, my Pampered Chef ones. I'm gonna grab the half cup. And I'm going to use my adjustable measuring spoon, just to use it as a spoon to put in the cocoa powder right in here. So it calls for half a cup. And when you're baking, obviously, it's much different than cooking. You want to be as precise as possible. That way, baking is more of a science, I find. You want to make sure that you are using the exact measurements if you are using a recipe. So that cocoa powder is going to go into the blender. Now we are going to add the sugar. So for our sugar, it calls for, let's see, it also calls for a half cup. So I am going to use another one of my spoons, and I'm going to scoop it into my half cup again. No need to get another measuring cup to dirty it. I'm just going to use this. You can also use coconut sugar. Again, as I said, this recipe book will give you alternatives if you don't have certain things on hand. It gives you options that you can substitute certain things, which is great because sometimes we get recipes, maybe we find them online, and we don't have certain ingredients at home. So it's great when you find a recipe book that will give you alternatives so that you don't feel you have to use them, and then it encourages you to actually use those recipes, which is pretty cool too. So we are going to add the sugar to the blender. So at this point, they also say that you can add 1 teaspoon of instant espresso powder. I don't have that, so I'm just totally going to omit it from the recipe. I'm not going to use it at all, and that's fine. And now we are going to add the baking powder, which is 1 teaspoon of that. I'm just going to get my little measuring spoon. 1 teaspoon added to the pitcher of the blender. Now we're going to need 1/4 teaspoon of salt as well. Which I have here. I'm just using my salt shaker. Add that. Now we're going to add the eggs. So we need 2 eggs. I'm going to hop to my fridge. When you are cooking or baking using eggs, you want to make sure you're cracking your eggs beforehand before putting it in here in case you crack any shells. It's going to be much easier to get the shells if you crack them into another bowl before you put them into the main bowl. Then, if you were to crack an eggshell into the pitcher here, you can easily grab the eggshell instead of your fingers because it'll slip away. Using a broken piece of eggshell, it'll cut through the membrane with the sharp edges and it will take out that eggshell. So we're gonna add that. Okay, now we're going to add the coconut oil. So I had melted this previously. I just used my 1 cup prep bowl to measure it because there are measuring indicators on the side, which is helpful. So I just melted it for about 30 seconds. We're gonna add some maple syrup. So it calls for 2 tablespoons of the maple syrup. So I'm just going to use this measuring spoon. 1, 2. And you can also use honey in here as well. If you wanted to use that as a sweetener. If you're vegan, of course, maple syrup is a better option, which is great as well. So now we have to add the almond milk. So it calls for about 2 tablespoons. So again, instead of dirtying another dish, I'm just going to use what I use to measure the maple syrup. And I'm going to measure 2 tablespoons of the almond milk. There we are. And finally, into the pitcher, the last thing we are going to add is 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So the great thing about this too is that you're not using a hand mixer. Everything is done in my deluxe cooking blender. For this recipe, obviously nothing is cooking in the blender, but it is going to mix it all up, and then it's going to save on dishes, which is amazing because I don't like doing dishes. It's not fun. That's one downfall of liking to cook and bake is the aftermath of dishes that come with it. But most of these are super easy. Again, this blender, it cleans itself. You put in some soap and a little bit of water and it will heat up to a certain degree. That way it is killing any germs or bacteria in the blender, and then it self-washes. So saves you from washing it in your sink or in your dishwasher. So we are going to blend it till it's smooth. So time varies for how long it will blend. So it says it could be 2 to 3 minutes. It just depends on the blender. And so we'll test it out here. A lot of it will probably rise because it is blending. I might have to stop it and take my spatula and push down some of the ingredients, but we will see. And in the meantime, I'll grab my spatula and I'm just going to put it on a custom blend. And I'm just going to press the center button and it will go, and I'll see if that custom blend's okay. We have different levels of the custom blend, but just for the sake of not really knowing, I'm just going to put it on number 1. We'll let that blend up until there's no chunks left. Another great thing too is with our stoneware pieces, you don't always have to line any of it with any type of parchment paper. If you're making cookies, we don't typically recommend using any parchment paper, but brownies can be very stubborn and difficult, so I always use parchment paper for brownies. It's easier to lift them up so that they can cool on my wired rack, and then they're easy to cut up. And you want to make sure that brownies cool for at least an hour to 2 hours before you try cutting them, because if you don't wait until they're completely cool, they will stick to your knife and it will just create an absolute mess. So your best bet, if you are patient, is to wait an hour or 2 before cutting, and that way you're not making a mess. So this is blending up. So I'm not sure what recipe, or in this recipe, sorry, what blender they're using. I'm not too sure. But for them, it's taking 3 minutes to blend up. This has probably only been going for maybe a minute 30 actually, it tells me right on my thing. and it's pretty blended. So I probably won't have to do the 2.5 to 3 minutes as it says in the book, because this is blending up pretty good. Once it is all blended up though, I'm going to use my spatula to help me out to pour it into my stoneware piece, and we are done. All we have to do now is add some coconut flakes and some chocolate chips. So this is so easy, as you can see, so it's great. So it is pretty blended up, so it just took about a minute 45 to blend up entirely, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to take my rectangular stone, put it down, and we are going to add this mixture. I'm going to push down the sides to make sure if there is any cocoa powder that it is incorporated fully, which the blender has done a really great job of making sure it is incorporated, so that's awesome. So we're going to pour this in here. And I'm going to use my spatula to make sure I get all of it in here. But how easy it is to blend everything in a blender that is going to clean itself. Like, it can't get any easier. It's great. And we offer lots of great recipes that utilize the blender for baking. I know that there are some pancake recipes that utilize the blender for making the batter. My Green Monster muffins that I make all the time are made right in here, and you make the oat flour right in here. So you take oats and you make flour in 30 seconds. So this blender is not only great for cooking soups, making the jam, but it's a great baking tool to help you in your kitchen. And it will clean up nice and easy. I'll show you guys how to do that in just a quick second here. So now that the batter is poured into here, I'm just going to kind of shake it around. That way it's even, and it's going to bake even in here, getting all the corners of the square stone covered. So now we're gonna sprinkle the top with shredded coconut and chocolate chips. It gives you measurements, but it also says you can just put however much you want. The best part is this coconut will toast up, and it's gonna be absolutely delicious. I love coconut. I put it in a lot of my baking. So I'm just gonna sprinkle it till it's pretty much covered. And now I'm gonna put my chocolate chips on top. So I want to use up the rest of these. These chunks are great. I've made a granola, a coconut granola with these, which is awesome. Again though, if you are using the vegan option, your best bet would be to find at a health food store or any grocery store, the health food section would be to find some vegan chocolate chips to use in this recipe. And I'm just going to add some milk chocolate ones because I know that's what people enjoy the most. And I am just going to take a little measuring spoon so I don't have to use my hands and sprinkle it around. I'm being pretty generous with the toppings, but I have to remember that we are using black beans in here, so it has to be somewhat healthy. Okay, so here we are with the finished black bean brownie mixture. So it's looking amazing. Again, as I said, the toasted coconut will toast up, which is going to be amazing. I'm going to put this in the oven, it says, for about 40 minutes until the center comes out clean. You want to use a toothpick. Another great tool is the cake tester and releaser, which is amazing. That's what you use to test your baking to make sure things are cooked thoroughly through and that the batter is still not liquidy, kind of. So that's a great tool as well. You want to make sure, again, you cool this for at least an hour to make sure that you're not making a mess with your brownie. And then it says in here as well, this can be stored in the fridge for up to 5 days. I mean, it has never lasted that long in my household, but you can freeze it as well if you have some leftovers and don't want to eat it right away. But again, for vegan options, it does say in here you guys can use flaxseed or chia eggs. You could use dairy-free chocolate, as I've mentioned. For gluten-free, you can use gluten-free coconut. For nut-free, you can use soy milk or any of your favorite nut-free milk instead of almond milk. Whatever your favorite is, you can definitely do that. So I'm just going to put these in the oven, put a timer on for 40 minutes, and then I'll show you guys how to use the heated wash. Timer is on, and now I'm going to just, my sink's behind you, so I'm just going to add about 3 cups of water to my glass pitcher, and I will show you guys the heated wash setting. So I'll bring it around here. So I've added 3 cups of water, so the water is looking super gross because all the chocolate. I'm going to use my dish soap. Add 1 or 2 drops. You don't want to put too much in. Then we are going to put it back on the blender. This will never run unless the lid is on, which is great for safety. I'm just going to wipe the top with a paper towel, because with the lid on, it won't reach there. So it'll make a chime. We know it's on. There is a heated wash setting right here, so I'm just going to go down to it, click it. It's going to heat up to 140 degrees, and it will be totally clean. The only thing I'm going to have to rinse out is the top lid because there will be soap suds in there. But how amazing is it that my blender is cleaning itself? So literally for dishes, I just have some spatulas. I have these measuring cups, and super easy. Gonna wash it all up, but I have these brownies in prep-wise under 10 minutes basically, and then they bake, and then they're good to go. So I'll start this here now so you can watch the heated wash setting. So it stops to heat up, and that goes the same for whenever you are making soup in our blender. It stops and it blends, and the process of it stopping is the blender heating up, and then once it reaches 140 degrees, this process will be done. So I know it's hard for you guys to see. You probably won't be able to see it in the video, but it's telling me it's heating up right now, and the degrees keep going up. So right now it says 65, 66, and now it's just going to climb until it reaches that 140 in number. So it's pretty cool. I'll let this play out here for another minute so you can see how easy it is to use this blender, and I'm loving it. But it does take so long because it is heating. Like, as I said a minute ago, it was at 66. Now it's at 90. So, and I can hear it. And of course, this is going to be hot to touch in about 2 minutes time when it's completely done, because it is heating it up. We have a heating element at the bottom. So it's not just the moving around and the friction that is causing the heat, which a lot of cooking blenders on the market right now are. That's all they are. When you're making the soups in them, it's just the friction that is making it hot. We actually have a heating element in here that is keeping your sauces and soup and cooking your jams. As I said many, many times on this page, the jam that we make in our blenders, we have the patent for. We're the only blender on the market that has a 2-step process, over 50 minutes to make homemade jam. I have some jam going here right now from my blender, and it is amazing. This is pineapple jam. I made about 6 jars of it. back in the springtime. You can freeze it, like freezer jam, so it's amazing. I keep mine in the fridge currently right now because this is the one I'm using, but it is amazing to use for that, especially in months where certain fruits are in season. June, you have raspberries, strawberries, so you like those freezer jams. This is a great tool that will help you make those jams. And then for gifting, even for Christmas, a lot of people use these 1-cup prep bowls. They order a whole bunch of these, and if you have the blender, our gifting jam with a little bow on top, because these do come with lids, and they're great gift ideas. So that's something for Christmas too. So it's going here now, starting to clean up all the sides. Questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. If you want the recipe, I can try my best to photocopy it and send it through email or through Messenger, but it's a must try, and I'll make sure to upload a finished video of these